If you think your heart can't race from a story about an airplane ticket, think again. Ebony Johnson was a rising star in her field, a quiet but fierce spirit who craved only one thing: respect. Yet what started as a routine flight from Atlanta to Paris soon spiraled into a maelstrom of betrayal secrets and unexpected alliances. Denied a simple first-class seat she'd rightfully paid for, Ebony triggered a chain reaction that tore apart a once proud airline from the inside. Buckle up, this tale isn't just about seats and service. It's about identity justice and the raw power of standing up. Ebony Johnson stood at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world, an empire of endless terminals, bright digital signage, and the low hum of travelers rushing to make connecting flights. She was in her late 20s, dressed in crisp business attire, a fitted navy blazer, matching trousers, and a pair of sensible heels that clicked with determined precision across the polished floor. Her posture was confident, her demeanor professional, yet warm. She'd always felt a surge of pride passing through these halls. After all, Atlanta was her home, and she was on the cusp of her biggest triumph yet. For months, Ebony had prepared for this trip to Paris. She had meetings with prominent art dealers and technology companies, scheduled her new brand consultancy firm was about to explode onto the international stage. She'd scrimped, saved, and even used her connections to secure a first-class seat for this important journey. She wanted to arrive, rested, prepared, and glowing with confidence. This meeting could open global doors for her. In her hand was the first-class ticket she'd booked online. The airline Sunsail Airways wasn't the largest, but it was known for its modern fleet and decent service. Ebony had traveled with them before, though never in first class, and she'd been impressed by their efficiency. The ticket had cost a fortune, yet Ebony believed it was worth every penny. However, the moment she approached the check-in counter, she sensed something amiss. A forced smile from the gate agent, a nervous glance that flickered up and down Ebony's figure. A polite but curt greeting that felt more practiced than genuine. Ebony tried to shake off the feeling. Perhaps it was just another stressed-out employee. But as the gate agent examined her passport and ticket, Ebony watched the agent's eyes widen slightly. She typed something into her computer, stared at the screen, and then lifted her gaze back to Ebony. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, voice tight with an edge of condescension. "But it appears there's an issue with your seat. We have you in economy, not first class. We'll need you to wait until we can sort this out." Ebony blinked in disbelief. She double-checked the printed confirmation on her phone. It clearly read first class. Her heart thumped in her chest, but she kept her calm. "There must be a mistake," she said quietly. "I have a confirmed first-class ticket." The agent gave a small shrug, eyes darting around. "I'll do what I can," she repeated stiffly. In that single moment, Ebony felt the first flicker of injustice. Something told her this was only the beginning. Ebony tried to stay composed, but a surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. For a moment, she wondered if she was overreacting. Maybe it really was just a glitch. After all, mistakes happened all the time, and the airline would eventually resolve it, right? Yet the gate agent's demeanor unsettled her. The woman's eyes avoided Ebony's whenever she asked a direct question. She typed slowly, chewing her lip almost as if she was waiting for someone else to appear and handle the problem. Ebony noticed how the line behind her grew longer, restless travelers checking their phones and exchanging irritated glances. After several minutes of tense silence, Ebony finally spoke up again. "Excuse me, I have to catch my flight soon. Can you please tell me exactly what's going on?" The gate agent glanced at her, then leaned in. "Ma'am," she whispered, We need you to step aside so we can assist other passengers. A supervisor will come speak to you." A wave of embarrassment rushed over Ebony as she saw people staring. She picked up her rolling suitcase and moved to the side, pressed uncomfortably close to a promotional sign advertising the airline's friendly skies. The irony made her clench her fists. Minutes stretched into 15, then 20. Ebony watched as business travelers in sharp suits, families with strollers, and groups of friends wearing matching vacation t-shirts all checked in without a hitch. Where was this supervisor? How long was she supposed to just stand there, invisible? Finally, a tall man in a pressed airline uniform walked up to her. His name tag read, Paul Beck, Customer Service Manager. His tone was polite, but indifferent. "Ms. Johnson, I understand there's an issue with your seat." "Yes," Ebony replied, voice firm. "I have a confirmed first-class ticket that I paid a premium for. Yet the agent says I'm booked in economy." She handed him her phone with the digital confirmation. Paul glanced at the screen, then typed something into his tablet. "That's strange," he said, frowning. "Our system shows an economy reservation. The flight is quite full tonight. First class is oversold." Ebony felt anger surge in her. "It can't be oversold if I purchased my seat weeks ago." He raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes these things happen. I'm afraid we won't be able to move you to first class, but we can try to give you an exit row in economy with extra leg room." His words were so final, so dismissive. Ebony nearly choked on her reply. "That's unacceptable," she said sharply, but she could feel the tremor in her voice. "I'm traveling for business. I need the space and rest. I paid for it. This isn't a free upgrade." Paul let out a weary sigh, as if Ebony's frustration was an inconvenience. "We may offer you a partial refund, but that's all I can do at the moment." Every ounce of Ebony's pride roared in protest. She had worked so hard to afford that first-class seat. Why should she be content with a partial refund and cramped economy seating for a transatlantic flight? And why did she have the nagging feeling that something more sinister was at play than just a system glitch? She looked Paul directly in the eyes. "I am not moving until I get what I paid for." Paul's jaw tightened, and in that moment, Ebony felt as if the entire airport had turned against her. Little did she know this would be the least of her battles with Sunsail Airways. A palpable tension filled the air. Other passengers glanced curiously at Ebony's standoff, with Paul, the tall uniformed customer service manager. Ebony could feel her cheeks burning, partly from indignation, partly from the intrusive thought that she might be making a scene, but she refused to let that self-consciousness break her resolve. Paul exhaled, staring down at his tablet again. "Ms. Johnson, let's step aside for a more private conversation," he suggested, gesturing toward a small office behind the check-in counters. The windowless office was cramped, illuminated by fluorescent lights that made Ebony's reflection appear sallow on the door's glass pane. She set her suitcase against the wall and perched on a metal chair. Her nerves taut. Paul sat across from her, at a small desk, frowning at his screen. "I see here you purchased your ticket through a third-party website," he said, his tone clipped. "Sometimes there can be technical errors with online travel agencies. It's really out of our hands." Ebony felt her stomach twist. She had indeed used a reputable online site, Flight Deck, and never had an issue before. She produced an email confirmation. "Here's the receipt, breakdown of costs and seat selection." Confirmation, she tapped the highlighted line, "Seat 2A first class." Paul read it, brow furrowing. "I'll speak to my supervisors, but I can't make any promises. Our flight manifest is full. What about tomorrow's flight?" Ebony demanded. "I have crucial meetings in Paris." but I'd rather be a day late than arrive exhausted and insulted." He shook his head. "First class is also sold out on tomorrow's flight." The defeat in his voice sounded almost genuine, but Ebony wasn't sure. Could they really not find a solution? A thought struck her. Was this happening because of how she looked? She didn't want to jump to conclusions. Ebony had faced subtle forms of bias before, especially in high-stakes business environments, where people sometimes questioned her qualifications or background, but paying customers were paying customers right. Still, the pang of dread remained. It was the incredulous stares from staff, the way the gate agent had tried to shuffle her away, as though Ebony didn't belong in first class. She took a deep breath, pushing the memory of previous microaggressions from her mind. "This is unacceptable," Ebony repeated. "I'd like to speak to someone higher up." Paul rose from his chair, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "All right, Miss Johnson, I'll see what I can do. But we don't have much time." He left the office, leaving Ebony alone with her thoughts. Alone in that cramped space, Ebony recalled how her mother had always told her to stand up for herself no matter what. Born and raised in an Atlanta neighborhood often overlooked by city development, Ebony had clawed her way to success. She had never wanted a free handout. She only wanted what she worked for, fairly earned and fully deserved. She sighed, glancing at the time on her phone. Her flight was boarding soon. Her mind raced. Should she raise a storm on social media? Should she call her mentor at CNN, who sometimes covered consumer issues? She hesitated. Ebony had hoped to handle this quietly, but her sense of injustice was boiling over. Moments later, Paul returned with someone else, a woman with a severe bun and a stoic expression. "This is Carmen Harris, our Regional Customer Experience Director." Paul said. "She's here to assist." Ebony stood meeting Carmen's intense gaze. "I hope you can help me," she began, voice steady, "because what's happening here is wrong." Carmen pursed her lips as if bracing for conflict. Little did Ebony know that beyond this moment, a colossal storm was about to unleash one that would do far more than threaten her flight itinerary. Carmen Harris emitted an air of unflappable authority, the kind of professional who seemed unaccustomed to being questioned. She was dressed in a sleek black suit, the airline's sun insignia pinned near her collarbone. Ebony recognized that Carmen was no ordinary supervisor. She was someone far higher on the corporate ladder. Perhaps Ebony's insistence had rattled enough channels to bring out the big guns. Carmen clasped her hands together, scanning Ebony from head to toe. "Ms. Johnson, I've reviewed your case. We do see a mismatch between our system and your documents." She paused as though carefully choosing her next words. "We apologize for any inconvenience. We've secured you a seat in economy for tonight. We can offer you a $300 travel voucher for future use and a partial refund of the fare difference." Ebony's lips parted in disbelief. "That's not what I paid for, Miss Harris. I need that first-class seat tonight. It's not just a matter of comfort. It's a matter of principle." Carmen's gaze sharpened. "The flight is fully booked, and we can't bump a confirmed first-class passenger who paid more." Ebony's eyes narrowed. "Paid more than I did. I doubt that I paid the listed price for first class. How much more does someone else need to pay to supersede a legitimate ticket?" A tense silence filled the room. Carmen's jaw tightened. "We have some very important flyers, including frequent flyers with extensive travel histories. Our loyalty program grants them certain privileges, and our Ebony exhaled, feeling the sting. So it's not about who purchased first. It's about status." Carmen gave a slow nod, as if Ebony were a child who had just stumbled upon an inconvenient truth. These policies are in place for a reason. Ebony's frustration spiked. Was this a veiled admission that her ticket had been sacrificed for a frequent flyer with more clout? She felt her pulse hammering anger, colliding with disappointment. She suspected something else. Perhaps the airline had made a conscious or unconscious decision that Ebony, a young black woman, couldn't possibly belong among their most valued clients. She took a breath. I understand there might be loyalty tiers, but I have proof I purchased this seat. You cannot simply dismiss my case as if it's a minor inconvenience. I have urgent business in Paris, and I need to arrive ready to perform at my best. Carmen shrugged, the faintest hint of impatience creeping into her stance. I understand your frustration, Ms. Johnson. Unfortunately, this is the best we can do. Ebony's phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder that time was running short. A voice in the back of her mind whispered that she should just accept the economy seat board the plane and deal with the fallout later. But a louder voice, the one that had propelled her through countless barriers, urged her to stand her ground. Fine, Ebony said. If that's how you treat paying customers, I'm sure the public will be interested to know. Carmen's eyes flickered a trace of alarm. That's your choice, Ms. Johnson. Ebony slipped her phone out, ignoring the boarding announcements crackling over the PA system. She composed a tweet with trembling fingers, tagging the airline and stating she'd been denied her purchased first-class seat. A swirl of conflicting emotions churned in her gut, fear of public backlash, frustration, but also an unwavering sense of conviction. As she hit send, Ebony had no idea that in a matter of hours, her post would unleash an online storm that would threaten to upend Sunsail Airways and her own life. The moment Ebony Johnson hit send on her phone, she felt both liberated and apprehensive. She turned to Carmen and Paul, meeting their stony expressions. I'm sorry it had to come to this, she said, voice shaking slightly from the adrenaline. But I'm done being dismissed. Without further debate, Ebony wheeled her suitcase out of the office. If the airline refused to accommodate her, she'd find her own way to Paris, even if it meant rebooking at the last minute on another airline. She could already guess how expensive that would be, but the cost paled in comparison to the cost of letting this slide. As Ebony marched through the concourse, she could see a flurry of phone notifications lighting up. Retweets, replies. Likes her tweet was taking off faster than she expected. She was no major social media star, but she had a decent network. More importantly, the injustice resonated with people who'd experienced similar discrimination or corporate runarounds. Within minutes, Ebony's direct messages filled with supportive notes from strangers. Some recounted their own horror stories of being bumped from flights. Others offered advice or asked if Ebony planned legal action. She also got a message from her old friend Monica, who worked as a junior producer at CNN's Atlanta bureau. What's going on, Eb? I saw your tweet. Call me ASAP, Monica wrote. Ebony paused in front of a row of gates, mind spinning. She dialed Monica. Her friend picked up almost instantly. Ebony girl, are you okay? That tweet is blowing up. We're talking thousands of shares already. Ebony pressed her free hand against her forehead. I just wanted the seat I paid for. Now I'm about to miss my flight and they won't help me. Monica's voice softened. I can try to talk to my editor. Consumer discrimination is a hot topic right now, especially with everything that's been going on in corporate America. Ebony hesitated. Part of her worried about turning a personal incident into a national headline, but another part of her, the part that recognized the layers of injustice in this scenario, felt that maybe going to the press was the only way to force change. Let me think it over, Ebony said. I need to figure out how I'm getting to Paris. First. A kind older couple, seated nearby, overheard her conversation. The wife leaned over and gently offered a supportive smile. "We saw what happened at check-in," she murmured. "So sorry you're dealing with this. We hope you get it sorted out soon." Ebony nodded gratefully. She found an open seat by a charging station to power her phone and reevaluate. Meanwhile, Twitter exploded. The airline's official account responded with a boilerplate apology and a promise to look into the matter. Ebony's phone nearly vibrated off the table from constant notifications. Breathing deeply, Ebony opened a flight aggregator website to see if she could salvage her trip. She found a last-minute business-class fare on another airline, which cost nearly double what she'd originally paid. Her stomach clenched at the expense, but her meetings in Paris were vital. She made the purchase, her heart pounding at the credit card bill that now loomed. As she clicked confirm, Ebony vowed that if she had to pay this extra cost, she would make sure Sunsail Airways answered for every cent. Little did she know her fight had only just begun. Ebony's new flight departed from the international terminal in 4 hours. The wait felt both interminable and fleeting. She anxiously monitored her phone, skimming article after article. By now, local Atlanta news outlets had picked up her viral tweet. Consumers were slamming Sunsail Airways for their poor treatment. Some people cried racism, others blamed corporate greed. A handful of naysayers mocked Ebony for making a fuss over a seat. Still more supporters emerged, sharing Ebony's story across platforms. The uproar escalated when someone unearthed old complaints against Sunsail about lost upgrades and mishandled seats, especially for minority passengers. Without Ebony doing anything further, a wave of negative press surged around the airline. Amid this chaos, Ebony fielded a call from Monica. "Ebony, I brought the story to my editor. He wants to run a piece on it, possibly an investigative angle, if more passengers come forward." Ebony's chest tightened. She was an entrepreneur, not an activist or a media figure. Yet fate had thrust her into this spotlight. "If this can help expose the truth, I'm willing to share my side," she said quietly. "I understand," Monica replied. "We're going to do our due diligence. That means verifying your documents, the timeline, and so forth. Also, we're looking for patterns. Has this happened to others?" Ebony thought of some colleagues who'd complained about covert discrimination in first-class lounges or airline upgrades. She offered to connect them, if it would help. While Ebony was on the phone, an unfamiliar number lit her screen with an incoming call, another friend or maybe a journalist. She let it go to voicemail, focusing on the conversation with Monica. But later, curiosity prodded her, and she listened to the message. "Hello, Ms. Johnson. This is Fiona Brooks, legal counsel for the Harriet Tubman Advocacy Alliance. We've seen your story online. We handle cases of systemic discrimination and traveler rights. If you're interested, please call us back. We believe your experience could be part of a larger pattern." Ebony felt a mixture of surprise and validation. Could this ordeal be bigger than her single ticket? The notion rattled her. She was not just one traveler scorned. She might be the face of a deeper crisis. As she waited for her new flight's boarding to begin, Ebony weighed her options. She could let the public frenzy fade, hoping for a quiet settlement, or she could step forward, and with the help of legal advocacy challenge, Sunsail Airways head-on. A flicker of determination ignited within her. There was something about the word alliance that resonated. She remembered all the times in her life she had been made to feel less than welcome. Classroom, microaggressions, workplace snubs, subtle gatekeeping at networking events. How many others had endured the same? A boarding announcement for Ebony's new flight rang out, and she collected her bags. A swirl of emotions churned inside her. Anger, hurt, pride, and a sudden sense of destiny. She would fly to Paris, fulfill her business obligations, and then return ready to confront Sunsail Airways, no matter how daunting that confrontation might be. Even then, Ebony had no inkling of just how deep this rabbit hole would go. On the 8-hour flight to Paris, Ebony tried to catch some sleep, but her mind reeled with memories, nightmares, and a swirl of future possibilities. She closed her eyes and recalled her earliest days in Atlanta. Her single mother worked 2 jobs, day shift as a hospital aide, night shift as a warehouse packer, just to keep Ebony and her younger brother clothed and fed. Growing up, Ebony had been taught to believe in herself. Fiercely, education was her pathway to opportunity. She excelled in school, joined debate club, and later studied marketing at a top university. Along the way, she encountered subtle barriers, a professor questioning if her writing was truly her own, a guidance counselor suggesting she aim a bit lower for her career goals. Each incident left tiny scars that fueled her determination. She remembered the day she landed her first internship at a Fortune 500 company. The internal culture was cutthroat, but Ebony impressed her supervisors. Still, she sensed their skepticism. A young black woman from a modest background aiming to climb the corporate ladder. She was often mistaken for the receptionist or the mailroom clerk. She brushed it off with a professional smile, focusing on the tasks at hand, determined to shatter every misconception. These flashbacks mingled with the here and now, her tense standoff with Sunsail Airways, the flurry of tweets, the calls from journalists and legal advocacy groups. It dawned on Ebony that perhaps all her life experiences had prepared her for this pivotal battle. When the plane landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport, Ebony felt a slight relief that her trip was intact. Despite the fiasco, she'd made it to Paris. She navigated the arrival formalities and headed straight to her hotel, determined to salvage her meetings. Upon checking in, Ebony discovered several more missed calls from unknown numbers, likely reporters chasing the story. Instead of calling them back, Ebony turned her attention to the tasks at hand. Over the next 2 days, she met with potential clients, pitched her consultancy services, and radiated professionalism. She even secured a promising contract with a major art gallery. Still, she couldn't fully relish her achievements with the airline scandal, looming like a storm cloud. In between meetings, Ebony scanned news alerts about Sunsail Airways. More customers were coming forward with grievances, lost baggage, overbooked flights, seat downgrades. Some even echoed Ebony's suspicion of bias or favoritism. The airline's PR department issued vague statements, but the uproar refused to subside. On her last evening in Paris, Ebony sat on a cafe terrace with a view of the Eiffel Tower, illuminated against the night sky. She stirred her tea and made a decision. Tomorrow, after flying back to Atlanta on her return ticket with a different airline, she would call Fiona Brooks from the Harriet Tubman Advocacy Alliance. If this was bigger than just her, Ebony couldn't let fear or inconvenience stop her from seeking accountability. Finishing her tea, she gazed at the shimmering monument. A quiet voice inside reminded her, "You didn't choose this fight. But here you are. Make it count." Flying back to Atlanta on a competing airline felt surreal. The contrast was stark. Staff greeted Ebony warmly. Her seat was exactly as purchased, and no one questioned her presence in business class. She wondered if her meltdown on social media had made Sunsail's rival extra cautious about service quality, or if this was simply how it was supposed to be for every paying customer. Once she touched down on home soil, Ebony braced for what awaited her. Sure enough, her phone lit up with new messages the moment she switched off airplane mode. Monica from CNN had requested an in-person interview. Several local newspapers had also reached out. And Fiona Brooks, the civil rights attorney, left another voicemail urging Ebony to connect at her earliest convenience. That afternoon, Ebony decided to meet Fiona at the Harriet Tubman Advocacy Alliance's downtown office. It was housed in a modest building with a simple sign out front, but Ebony could sense the weight of important work happening inside. The receptionist escorted her to a small conference room lined with books on legal precedents and civil rights history. Ebony's gaze fell on a framed photograph of Harriet Tubman herself, her resolute eyes seeming to watch over them. Fiona Brooks entered with a warm smile. She was a tall, poised woman in her mid-40s, clad in a tailored grey suit. Ebony felt an instant sense of relief at Fiona's calm, empathetic demeanour. After brief introductions, Fiona leaned forward. "Ebony, we've been following your story closely," she said. "We specialize in cases where systemic discrimination or consumer rights violations intersect. We believe there's a significant angle here, but we need more details." Ebony explained everything from her first-class ticket purchase to the humiliating fiasco at check-in, the conversation in the cramped office, and the airline's dismissive responses. She even showed Fiona the receipts, screenshots, and email confirmations. Fiona took careful notes, occasionally nodding or frowning. When Ebony finished, Fiona glanced at her. "I'm sorry you went through all that. The fact that the airline admitted they'd oversold first class and prioritized other passengers is troublesome. We've seen that tactic before. Now the question is whether there's a specific pattern related to race, or if it's a broader issue of disregarding certain customers, possibly with discriminatory intent." Ebony felt her heart pound. "I never wanted a fight, Miss Brooks, but it happened. And given the reaction online, I suspect others have had similar experiences." Fiona's eyes flickered with determination. "Indeed, we've had calls and emails from former Sunsail customers describing similar seat downgrades and questionable encounters. We're putting together a class action angle, but it'll require thorough evidence." A ripple of both fear and excitement coursed through Ebony. This wasn't just about her seat anymore. It was about challenging a system that might have been hurting countless others. "I'm willing to help," she declared. "I'll provide whatever documentation I can." Fiona nodded. "We'll move forward carefully. In the meantime, I suggest you keep records of any communication from Sunsail. If they reach out, direct them to us." Ebony exhaled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She wasn't alone in this. As she left the building, the framed photo of Harriet Tubman caught her eye again. For the first time, Ebony felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could turn this personal indignity into a catalyst for something bigger. 2 days after Ebony's return, she received an unexpected email from Sunsail Airways Customer Relations Department. The subject line read, "Resolution Offer, Case Airline 2398. Her heartbeat drummed as she opened it, half expecting an apology or admission of fault. Instead, she found a tersely worded statement. "Dear Ms. Johnson, we acknowledge your concerns regarding your recent travel experience. Sunsail Airways values all our passengers and aims to provide excellent service. After careful review, we have determined that your seat change was due to an overbooking system error. As a gesture of goodwill, we are offering a travel credit of $500 toward future flights. This is our final offer on this matter." Sincerely, Rachel Kim, Passenger Relations Specialist Ebony, felt a spark of indignation. $500? That was barely more than the partial refund they'd floated earlier, and it didn't come close to covering the extra thousands she spent on a last-minute ticket. Moreover, the email skirted any real acknowledgement of wrongdoing or discrimination. Resisting the urge to draft a scathing reply, Ebony forwarded the email to Fiona Brooks. Within the hour, Fiona called. A standard hush-up tactic, the attorney said. They want to keep you quiet without admitting guilt. Don't respond directly to them. We'll send an official reply on your behalf. Ebony nodded, relieved she had professional guidance. That same evening, a large brown envelope arrived at her apartment building, delivered by courier. Inside were more details from the Harriet Tubman Advocacy Alliance reports from other Sunsail passengers who believed they'd been unfairly bumped from premium seats or who'd faced hostility from staff. Some suspected racial bias. Others pointed to the airline's confusion about who belongs in first class. One passenger recounted how a flight attendant had questioned whether she was lost when she boarded first class. The swirling revelations both angered and emboldened Ebony. She learned about a single father from Chicago who'd saved for months to surprise his daughter with a first-class trip to Hawaii, only to be told at boarding that economy was his only option due to an unexplained ticket error. Another was a Latina businesswoman, downgraded last minute with no refund. Each story echoed Ebony's own. She realized they were not isolated incidents, but symptoms of a deep-rooted problem. If this was the tip of the iceberg, how many more travelers had quietly swallowed their indignation, too tired or too wary to fight back, determined to hold the airline accountable. Ebony joined forces with the Alliance's legal team. She agreed to testify if necessary to help gather statements and to become a spokesperson of sorts for these disgruntled passengers, though the role felt both daunting and surreal. Little did Ebony know, however, that Sunsail Airways was not about to take this challenge lying down. Behind the scenes, a strategic crisis team was forming, intent on stifling the growing backlash by any means necessary. The stage was set for a clash that would force Ebony to confront not only corporate power, but hidden truths about her own inner strength. One afternoon, Ebony received a call from Monica at CNN. "My editor wants to do a televised segment. Would you be willing to come on air?" Monica's tone was careful, knowing the magnitude of what she was asking. Ebony's stomach knotted. Live television coverage would catapult her from local controversy to national scrutiny. But after reading dozens of testimonies from similarly aggrieved passengers, she felt a responsibility to stand up for them. "Yes," she answered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve. "I'll do it." That evening, Ebony, accompanied by Fiona Brooks, walked into CNN's Atlanta studio. She was ushered into a makeup chair, bright lights shining overhead. Producers mic'd her up, tested the audio and asked if she needed water. Everything felt surreal, but Ebony tried to maintain a calm exterior. When she finally sat across from the anchor, a polished journalist named Rebecca Mills. The cameras rolled. Rebecca asked Ebony to walk viewers through her experience, from buying the first-class ticket to the humiliating standoff at the airport. Ebony explained the details, clearly emphasizing that she was not seeking special treatment, merely what she had already paid for. She mentioned the numerous other passengers who came forward, pointing to a troubling pattern of seat downgrades and questionable service that often impacted people of color. To Ebony's relief, Rebecca handled the interview with empathy and professionalism. "What would you like to see happen next?" she asked. Ebony glanced into the camera. "I want Sunsail Airways to acknowledge their errors and provide fair compensation. More importantly, I want them to review their policies for overselling seats. And if there's any racial bias at play, conscious or unconscious, I want them to confront it and make real changes." The interview ended, Ebony's pulse roaring in her ears. Fiona squeezed her hand reassuringly. "You did well," she whispered. However, even as Ebony breathed a sigh of relief, the next wave of the conflict brewed. Sunsail Airways legal counsel swiftly countered by issuing a statement to major news outlets calling Ebony's claims unsubstantiated and labeling the discrimination charges inflammatory. Their PR team painted Ebony as someone seeking media attention, implying that she was exploiting the issue for personal gain. Ebony's heart sank when she saw the statement. She knew how easily public opinion could turn, especially if people perceived her as greedy or exaggerating, but she also knew the truth of her experience, and so did the other passengers. Fiona encouraged Ebony to stay strong. This is typical corporate maneuvering. Deny, minimize, shift. The blame, the attorney said. We'll keep gathering evidence. The more they try to spin this, the more they risk exposing themselves. In the days that followed, Ebony's inbox flooded with messages from supporters, victims, and yes, even critics. Some attacked her for making a racial issue out of a simple booking error, while others thanked her for shining a light on discriminatory practices. The swirl of opinions left Ebony exhausted, yet emboldened, determined not to let public pressure or corporate smear tactics break. Her Ebony reminded herself daily she was fighting not just for a seat on a plane, but for the principle that everyone deserves fair treatment, free from bias. And in that fight, she found a new wellspring of courage. Somewhere deep inside Sunsail Airways corporate headquarters, an imposing glass tower in downtown Dallas, a crisis meeting was underway. The CEO, a stoic figure named Thomas Hastings, presided over a long conference table. Around him sat top executives, PR specialists and attorneys. The tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. An assistant projected Ebony's CNN interview onto a screen. The room grew silent as Ebony described her ordeal, her voice unwavering. When the clip ended, Hastings cleared his throat. This story is spiraling out of control, he said. Share prices are wobbly, and the media is painting us as a villain. We need a strategy to extinguish this PR fire. Rachel Kim, the passenger relations specialist, who'd authored the final offer, email spoke up. We tried a goodwill gesture, but she's refusing it. Now she's joined forces with that advocacy group. We need a stronger approach. A corporate lawyer at the table tapped a pen on his legal pad. We could challenge her claims legally. Demand she prove discriminatory intent. Litigation could be costly, but it might discourage others from joining her cause. Hastings grimaced. That's risky. This case is playing out in the court of public opinion as much as in any actual courtroom. Next, Tony Reed, the PR chief, leaned forward. We could do a controlled public apology, but not necessarily admit wrongdoing, emphasize the overselling glitch promise to review policies, and offer Ebony Johnson a settlement on the condition she drops further claims. Rachel interjected. We've already offered her money. She's not taking the bait. She's driven by something else, maybe principle or media attention. A marketing executive who'd been silent until now drummed her fingers on the table. People are upset because they see this as part of a broader systemic issue. She's become a spokesperson for all these other passengers. If we don't address the root, we'll lose in the court of public opinion. Hastings rubbed his temples. Fine. Draft a statement that acknowledges customer dissatisfaction, pledges a thorough internal review, and ensures commitment to diversity and inclusion. He paused, scanning the faces around him. But behind closed doors, keep close tabs on Ebony Johnson. If she's stirring up more trouble, we need to know. Perhaps we can find inconsistencies in her story, anything to undermine her credibility. A hush fell over the room. It was clear the airline brass would not simply roll over. They intended to salvage their reputation by any means, even if it meant discrediting Ebony. Meanwhile, Ebony, unaware of these machinations, continued to rally support, gather testimonies, and work with Fiona Brooks. She believed that truth, justice, and determination would prevail. But Sunsail Airways was playing a high-stakes game, one that could get dirty fast. Little did Ebony know the next twist would come from a surprising piece of evidence that threatened to blow the airline's defense wide open and place Ebony in even greater danger of retaliation. One late evening, as Ebony organized her notes for Fiona's legal team, her phone buzzed with a call from a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. A low male voice crackled through the line. Ms. Johnson, this is Russell Green. I used to work at Sunsail Airways. I saw your story on CNN. I need to meet with you. Ebony's heart jumped. How did you get my number? I asked around. He replied, sounding slightly embarrassed. I have information about seat assignments, overbooking policies, things you might find valuable. But I'd prefer not to talk over the phone. Too risky. Ebony's mind reeled. A whistleblower from inside the airline. This could be huge. Yet she also felt a pang of caution. How do I know you're legitimate? You can call Fiona Brooks. She knows me. I reached out to the Harriet Tubman Alliance months ago about potential discrimination at Sunsail, but I never followed through. I wasn't ready then. But after seeing what they did to you, I can't stay silent anymore. Ebony swallowed hard, a rush of anticipation and anxiety mingling in her stomach. All right, I'll speak to Fiona, and if she vouches for you, we can meet. Is that okay? Fine, thanks. The next morning, Ebony contacted Fiona, who confirmed that Russell Green was indeed a former Sunsail employee who had once hinted at systemic problems he'd served on the seat inventory management team, the very department that handled overbooking procedures. Ebony's pulse quickened at the thought. If Russell had tangible proof of skewed or discriminatory practices, it could be a game changer. They arranged to meet at a quiet coffee shop in Midtown. Ebony arrived early, sipping green tea, while her mind raced through best-case and worst-case scenarios. Finally, Russell walked in, a tall, thin man in his 50s, wearing a worn leather jacket and carrying a battered briefcase. His eyes darted around nervously before he spotted Ebony and joined her at a corner table. They shook hands, both a bit stiff. Then Russell opened his briefcase, pulling out a folder stuffed with spreadsheets, emails, and internal memos. This is just a fraction of what I have, he whispered, his tone grim. Sunsail systematically oversells first-class seats and downgrades, certain passengers deemed less likely to retaliate. People of color, younger travelers, infrequent flyers. It's all in the data. Ebony stared at the folder, barely breathing. This was the smoking gun proof that the airline didn't just make random mistakes, but followed a calculated policy. And if that policy disproportionately targeted marginalized passengers, Ebony's entire case would be validated. Her hands shook as she flipped through the spreadsheets, rows of flight numbers, seat assignments, and cryptic notes that implied downgrade potential. She felt a chill run down her spine at the realization that this wasn't just about her. It was about a broader, darker pattern of exploitation. Russell rubbed his temples. I'm risking a lot showing you this legal trouble blacklisting from the industry, but I can't watch them get away with it anymore. Ebony reached across the table and gently touched his hand. Thank you, she whispered, voice trembling with gratitude. You're doing the right thing. News of Russell's revelations soon reached Fiona Brooks, who quickly arranged a confidential meeting at the Harriet Tubman Advocacy Alliance headquarters. Ebony Russell and a small legal team pored over the documents, meticulously cross-referencing them with passenger accounts. The evidence was damning. Internal memos suggested that employees were trained to identify and downgrade passengers who were least likely to escalate complaints, a euphemism that often correlated with socioeconomic profiling. As Ebony delved deeper into the data, she saw her own flight number, coded notes next to her seat assignment, The classification read First Class Risk. Possible downgrade, not loyalty, price-driven. Ebony's name was highlighted under a subcolumn, Upgrade Reversal Potential. She felt a sickening churn in her stomach, realizing she'd been a prime target from the start. Fiona looked up from the pages, eyes blazing. This goes beyond a simple overselling glitch. It's systematic. The pattern disproportionately impacts travelers of color and those not enrolled in high-tier loyalty programs. It's illegal and unethical. While the Alliance prepared a lawsuit, the press caught wind of an anonymous source leaking internal Sunsail documents. Rumors swirled about an impending class action lawsuit that could devastate the airline's reputation and finances. Sunsail's stock plunged, and the company scrambled to regain control. Then an anonymous corporate insider leaked a memo from CEO Thomas Hastings. It read in part, "We must protect our brand at all costs. Identify any leaks and take swift action to prevent further damage. This story must be contained." At that point, Ebony's phone began ringing off the hook with interview requests. Monica from CNN wanted an exclusive update. Major national outlets clamored for Ebony's side of the unfolding story. Each day, Ebony felt the scrutiny intensify. She received both praise and vile hate. Male trolls accusing her of playing the race card, and supporters hailing her as a champion for consumer rights. Behind the scenes, Sunsail's legal counsel bombarded Fiona and her team with demands, disclaimers, and even veiled threats. The airline threatened to countersue Ebony for defamation if she continued to allege racial discrimination, instead of scaring her into silence. However, these tactics only steeled Ebony's resolve. In the midst of the chaos, Ebony received a call from a private number. When she answered, Thomas Hastings himself was on the line. His tone was strained, yet artificially polite. "Ms. Johnson," he began, "I'd like to extend an invitation to meet in person. Let's find a resolution that benefits all parties." Ebony considered his words carefully. Agreeing to a private meeting with the CEO could be a trap, a ploy to hush her up with a quick settlement. But it was also a rare opportunity to confront the airline's top decision-maker face to face. "I'll bring my attorney," she said firmly. A pause crackled over the line. Then Hastings replied, "Fine, see you next week in Atlanta." Ebony ended the call, her heart thundering. The airline that had once belittled her was now begging for negotiations. She couldn't shake the sense that a final reckoning was near. The meeting was set in a neutral location, a sleek downtown Atlanta law firm, known for its glass-walled conference rooms that overlooked the city skyline. Ebony arrived with Fiona Brooks by her side. Russell Green had offered to be nearby in case his testimony or documents were needed. When Ebony stepped into the conference room, Thomas Hastings rose from his seat, offering a stiff handshake. He was flanked by 2 corporate lawyers and a PR executive. His expression betrayed tension as he gestured for Ebony and Fiona to sit. "I appreciate you coming," Hastings said. "We recognize your concerns. Ms. Johnson." Fiona cut straight to business. "We have significant evidence of systemic discrimination and fraudulent seat downgrade practices. Unless Sunsail is prepared to address this head-on, we're prepared to file a class action lawsuit on behalf of our clients." Hastings cleared his throat, his gaze flickering uneasily. "We don't condone discrimination. If some policies were misapplied, we're willing to correct them. However, we want to avoid a prolonged legal battle that benefits no one." Ebony swallowed, recalling the humiliating moment she was told her first-class seat no longer existed. She inhaled deeply, forcing herself to remain calm. "I want real accountability, public acknowledgement, compensation for all affected passengers, and a thorough audit of your booking systems. Not just hush money." One of the Sunsail lawyers winced, as though Ebony's demands were a slap in the face. Hastings lifted his chin. "We're prepared to offer a settlement in the high 6 figures distributed among lead plaintiffs. We'll also issue a statement apologizing for any inconvenience." Fiona's brow furrowed. "This goes beyond inconvenience. We need structural reforms, plus a legally binding agreement that ensures your company won't repeat these discriminatory practices." The tension thickened. A hush stretched across the table. Finally, Hastings exhaled, shoulders sagging slightly. "We'll do what it takes to rebuild trust. Provide us with a list of terms for review." Ebony mustered the courage to lock eyes with him, "and I need a direct apology publicly. I'm not looking for personal fame, but people deserve to know you're taking responsibility." Hastings' cheeks reddened slightly. "Fine. We'll craft a statement and coordinate with your counsel to finalize the settlement terms." The subsequent weeks were a whirlwind of legal negotiations, press releases, and internal reforms at Sunsail. True to their word, the airline issued a public apology, acknowledging mismanagement in seat allocation and committing to new initiatives to prevent bias. Substantial restitution was provided to numerous claimants, and Ebony's legal team maintained oversight. In the end, Ebony's first-class fiasco exposed a trove of corporate malpractice, forcing Sunsail Airways to confront its own flawed systems. Hastings, facing internal pressure and public scorn, offered his resignation. Within the year, a new CEO took charge, pledging a different era for the airline. Ebony, for her part, emerged both weary and triumphant. She returned to her consultancy work, her reputation bolstered by her stand for justice. Though she never asked for hero status, many in her community hailed her as an emblem of resilience. She had proven that one voice armed with truth and courage could indeed make the mighty bow in acknowledgement. Ebony Johnson's battle wasn't just about one airline seat. It was about a society that still questions who deserves to be treated with dignity. Her journey from a humiliated passenger at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport to a powerful agent of change highlights what can happen when we refuse to accept injustice as just the way things are. In the end, Ebony didn't merely secure what she'd paid for. She forced a corporate giant to reckon with its own biases and practices, benefiting countless others who'd never had the chance to fight back. If this story moved you, please take a moment to support our channel. Hit that like button, share the video to spread awareness, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories. Your engagement helps us bring real issues like this to light. Together, we can demand fairness, one seat, one story at a time.